Well, here at the Aussie Wire, we couldn't help but notice, and no doubt you noticed as well, there was a rash of resigned suddenly. Slightly different to the other thing that's happening that no one's allowed to talk about. Resigned suddenly. Prime ministers from all over the world suddenly stepping down. Premiers from all over Australia seemed to be following suit. They were dropping like flies at one point, and Mark McGowan was no exception. He resigned because the poor guy was just exhausted. He was so tired that he felt he couldn't continue to do the job of Premier, and so he stepped aside to allow someone with more vigour and more energy, someone who was less exhausted. Well, I thought, we'd better do a welfare check. We'd better check in on poor old Mark McGowan and make sure he's okay. So I thought I'd talk to my favourite West Australian, Kate Fantinel. Thank you for joining us here on the Aussie Wire.
Thanks, Topher.
How is poor Mark? Have you visited him in hospital recently, kept him company as he recuperates from this exhaustion?
No, and I don't think I'll get the chance to when he's taken on no less than 4 jobs since stepping down a few months ago under the guise of being too tired and simply exhausted to go
Wow.
on. Seems like $275,000 a year from the taxpayer just isn't enough for him.
Well, I mean, the man's got expenses. He's got to maintain that lifestyle of the rich and famous, or at the very least, the powerful. You say 4 jobs. Now, to my knowledge, this includes a job. I believe it was was it with BHP or with Rio Tinto? Remind me.
He's got 2 jobs with mining companies, including Mineral Resources and BHP. So the very companies that he ruled over the last 6 years, he's now sitting in their boardrooms earning a crust from them.
He's also working with Joe Hockey. There's another job in there as well somewhere. How he has time for all of this, I'm not quite sure. And I believe he's also hit the speaking circuit now as well, charging tens of thousands of dollars for those who would like to listen to him talk for an hour or so.
I believe it's $15,000 appearance fee to see former Premier Mark McGowan. I'm not too sure what he will be talking about. Perhaps it may be the iron ore curtain or how he kept us in a state of emergency for 963 days. I mean, there is a lot to talk about.
Well, look, I think if he's charging $15,000, it creates a real opportunity for you and I, Kate. We can just market ourselves for $14,999. Bargain. Absolute bargain, and the bookings will come flooding in, no doubt. It's quite an extraordinary thing, though, and to be serious about this for a moment, and I'm sorry to do that, but to be serious for a moment, we do see this a lot in politics, where whether they're premiers and prime ministers or whether they're various ministerial positions, they shovel enormous amounts of money into the private sector. Money comes from taxpayers, grants go out or exemptions go out of these various, regulatory approvals will go out. And then somehow, it's just pure coincidence, I'm sure, there is a job on the board of those very same companies just waiting for them when they retire from politics. It's a wonderful coincidence, don't you think?
It's just another example of the Western Australian oligarchy working remarkably well for, as you said, the rich and famous. Meanwhile, he's left behind a state with homelessness crisis, domestic violence crisis, cost of living crisis. I mean, if I was him, I'd be maybe taking a job with charity or a not-for-profit, but someone's got to earn a crust somehow, I suppose.
Try flipping burgers for a while. At least that way you might be making something useful with your life. Look, Clive Palmer's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think he's got a really good point here. The UAP have released a press release here questioning when did Mark McGowan start working for BHP? Because, of course, the Clive Palmer is currently in lawsuits against the West Australian government over the fact that he was knocked back for approvals for various mines that would have been competing with BHP's interests. Do you think Clive has a point here? Is this a valid question?
It is a very valid question, and I would like to know exactly at what point did Mr. McGowan decide he was too tired to lead the Western Australian people that he professed to care about for so many years, only to run off into the sunset with his mates in the mining sector, just not the ones that challenged him over his hard border policy.
Yes, it's certainly, the Animal Farm quote, all the animals were equal, but some were more equal than others. It certainly, it has the appearance, I can't say with certainty what was going on inside Mark McGowan's mind, nor the people that recruited him to BHP or anywhere else, but it has the appearance of jobs for the boys, a bit of a quid pro quo, perhaps in return for favours done whilst he was in power. I'm not saying that definitely happened, but it's certainly, I will say that it definitely has that appearance. And I think that appearance in and of itself is a huge problem. And this is something that's happening Australia-wide, not just in West Australia, and something that needs to be addressed. Well, Kate Fantinel, please keep an eye on poor old Mark for me. Make sure that his recovery continues. I lose sleep worrying about him at night. And we look forward to having you back on the Aussie Wire very soon.
Thank you. Do the right thing, as Premier McGowan said.